What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Some commentary for you. I guess, is it big news? The UFC moves back a card. We're going to get Tyron Woodley and Gilbert Burns.
Fight chub. I'm sorry. I had a moment. I got some fight chub.
You had a moment?
Fight chub. I had a moment. I had some fight chub.
Well, listen.
I love this fight. I love this fight. I don't mean to cut you off. I know you start with the lead and all that stuff. And, you know, you're the host and I'm the I'm the color guy and all that stuff. But, God, I love this fight. Go ahead.
I do too. I listen, I like Gilbert Burns a lot. I feel like this is an interesting fight. I really felt like the last time we saw Woodley kind of fight somebody around his size was Kelvin Gastelum. There's a lot of inactivity since then. You know, Gilbert Burns is 33 years old. Apparently, you know, to some, he's, you know, this killer after beating Damian Maia. And I get to some there's overhyping, you know, beating Maia, and Gunnar Nelson, I suppose, in there too. Woodley's kind of coming off the loss to Kamaru. There's so many narratives in this fight. But at the end of the day, when I look at what's going to happen here, personally, I think, number one, whether you're a wrestling fan in terms of, you know, looking at Woodley, or you're a grappling fan in terms of, you know, Burns, that's going to determine where you see this fight going. Me, grappling guy, I see this going Gilbert Burns' way. I also feel like Gilbert Burns has the stand-up that a lot of other fighters don't have. He's a much more complete package, I think, than people give him credit for. That's going to really give him the advantage either way this fight goes against Tyron Woodley.
The thing to me is, I can say without reservations, Gilbert Burns is one of the nicest guys in jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts. Really, if you've ever had a chance to speak with him, a humble, nice, friendly, outgoing, humble guy. So he's easy to root for. Tyron Woodley is a fantastic fighter who has a gigantic chip on his shoulder. Understandably, I don't think he ever got the respect he deserved before he was champion, after he was champion. It's almost like he was the champ no one wanted when he had incredible skills with his wrestling. Of course, All-American at Missouri, knockout power in his hands. We saw that against Robbie Lawler. I think part of it was in his championship run against Damian Maia and Wonderboy Thompson. Those are guys, in certain respects, it's very hard to look good against. Remember, the first fight against Wonderboy was great. It was a draw. It was a fantastic fight. And then the second one, he had to play a little bit more conservatively, and it was a snoozer. Damian Maia, the only fighter to really look great against a prime Damian Maia, against a Maia that was, I think Burns, you know, I give him credit for that win, but, you know, Damian Maia isn't what he used to be. Colby Covington smashed him. Other than that, look at the Kamaru Usman fight with Damian Maia. It was a snoozer. Tyron Woodley's fight against him is a snoozer. It's just, he's a hard guy to look good against. So another thing is the people Tyron Woodley was matched against, I don't think made him look great. In order to win those fights, he had to kind of look bad, and he won them. But constant battles with Dana White, constant battles with the UFC, a lot of time off, as you said. So the underlying issue here is it's a guy who's easy to root for against a guy who fans didn't seem to root for much. In Tyron Woodley, as good as he was at 170, as great as he was at 170.
Yeah, I mean, that's to me as a fan the most interesting thing. If they had taken different paths on a personal level, you could see fans compare these guys almost side by side. You know, you've got
Right.
the accredited wrestling versus the accredited jiu-jitsu. You've got a power puncher in a way versus a guy that's shown power. You've got guys that both have to follow game plans to win fights. And it just seems like, as you said, one of them in Tyron Woodley's case grew a little bit long with fans, and obviously, you know, the music doesn't help anything in this equation. Let me also say that if Gilbert Burns comes out to one of Tyron Woodley's songs, I would just go ballistic. Gilbert,
That'd be so awesome.
that is what you need. If he could come out to one of Tyron Woodley's, you know, it's supposed to be in the UFC Apex, right? So it's going to be empty as anything in there. If he could come out to one of those awful songs, could you imagine? Just as a fan, we wouldn't know who was coming out first, right? There's not going to be any TV or lighting, so you would assume that when Tyron Woodley's music hits, Tyron Woodley's coming out. That is, I wonder if that's probably never happened before, because no other
That'd be so
fighter is
great.
also. Yeah, I really wish that would happen. But you know, it is interesting. There's so many parallels between them that, you know, fans just have kind of pulled away from, in a division where a lot of people don't get liked. have pulled away from Tyron Woodley. And I think more and more fans have gravitated over to Gilbert Burns. Although from what I've seen, there's people that still don't know who Gilbert Burns is, but I think they're about to find out.
Well, world champion in jiu-jitsu. I've been a fan of his for years. His jiu-jitsu is beautiful. It's smooth. It's aggressive. It's technical. It's everything I like to see. And what stands out to me is his wars with Crone Gracie when Crone was really in his prime. Please, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but they grappled a few times. But what stands out to me the most is Burns got submitted by Crone at a tournament, I believe, in Italy. May have been, European championships or something. And then came back and beat him in the finals of the Worlds in 2011 handily. And that always impressed me. You know what I mean? Usually when a guy smokes you, especially a guy like Crone, who's so good, so technical, and submitted so many great guys, usually they just get in your head and they got you, right? And if you follow jiu-jitsu, you always saw those things where, Marcelo Garcia, as amazing as he was, could never get over Terere. Andre Galvao, as great as he was, could never get over Marcelo Garcia. He just couldn't get over that hump. And, Durinho, his ability to defeat Crone after Crone had submitted him before, that says a lot about his heart and his desire and his will to get better in all these things. And an easy guy to root for. I think he made the right move up to 170. I think he does have the frame for it. He's going to have trouble with the wrestling of Tyron Woodley. If there's one weakness to Burns' game is he's not a great wrestler. That's not what he grew up doing. Phenomenal jiu-jitsu, but it's up to Tyron Woodley whether this fight goes to the ground. So there's going to be some stand-up where Tyron Woodley, I believe, has the power advantage, although Burns is very technical. And the wrestling advantage goes to Tyron Woodley. So it's going to be an interesting style matchup. This is not an easy fight for Gilbert Burns, who has been doing everything but begging on his hands and knees for a fight. Have you been watching his social media? Like every card, it's like, put me in, coach. I'm ready. Like everything. Hey, Dana, I'm ready. He just constantly does that. And, it's going to be, be careful what you wish for. He got a very tough fight, which I think would be very entertaining.
You know who else? So I would say does that a lot is Brian Kelleher is constantly pushing for the. I mean, I like to see it. It just has to happen. You know what I mean? If it doesn't happen, it looks weird. He is constantly posturing for Shane O'Malley. I also wanted to mention, I didn't realize this until I was kind of scrolling through Twitter. Do you know that today is the birth date of Andre the Giant and George St. Pierre?
Oh, much love, dude. Much love to both those guys. Did I tell you my crazy GSP story when we were in San Jose?
Yeah, you told us on like the 30-second podcast. Somebody's going to have to go listen to it, right?
I might have, yeah. Where he was being harassed by fans and he thought I was one of them.
Well, I mean, you have to tell the story now, but personally, I'm already a little disappointed in the story that he didn't think you were Joe Rogan.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, he didn't think I was Joe. Because I've interacted with GSP several times. Like, he knew who I was. And he was walking to the hotel and I was behind him. And I went, hey, George, how you doing? And he turns around and he like mad dogs me. Now, if you can imagine being mad dogged by GSP, who never mad dogged anybody, you know what I mean? I was like, what? And then his face just changed. And he went, oh, hey, Jimmy, nice to see you. And I was like, well, apparently some fans had been kind of harassing him around the corner. Not much, but like, probably just bugging him for an autograph, and he gave it and they wanted something else. I don't know what happened, but they walked away and I went up behind. He thought I was one of them at first. He didn't see them walk away or whatever. So he was like fed up with him and turned around, was going to be like, hey, get the fuck away from me. And it turned out it was me. So yeah, I had a moment where I was like, dude, GSP's pissed at me. He never gets pissed at anybody. And then he's like, oh, Jimmy, good to see you. But yeah, I had that little panic moment.
I love how you went right into the French accent, Jimmy Smith. We've never heard that.
I've been around it enough, thankfully. Yeah, man, he's a special dude. And Andre the Giant. If you don't like Andre the Giant, I don't like you as a person. By the way, that's just if you're not a fan of Andre the Giant, we're not cool.
I don't know any other show on earth that can go from here's a fight that got announced to Andre the Giant GSP to you actually mocking GSP's accent while telling the story.
I'm not mocking at all. By the way, GSP, if you're listening to this, I am not mocking at all. I very much appreciate his accent. Does a great job with the French or English.
No, GSP, if you're listening, he was, in fact, mocking before the show. We planned this all out.
Right. I was working on mocking GSP. That was what I was building up to.
That's a good way for us to get traction. Your story about eating the staples didn't work, so we need to get you beat up by GSP. That'll do it.
Oh, that would be great. Just exactly what I need in my life.
Of course, who doesn't need to see GSP back against Jimmy Smith in a no holds barred match in memory of Andre the Giant? We'll bring it all together. But I will say, for what it's worth, it is good to see a guy like Gilbert Burns get the call against,
Yeah.
like you said, a champion that he's asked for. And to that point, he did everything that was asked of him to get there. He sure he had some setbacks along the way, but he performed when he needed to perform. He earned it. I've already seen some narrative that he didn't, and I think it's a really good fight for Woodley too. Obviously coming off the loss, like we talked about the layoff, this is a way for him with a win to get right back in contention. Look really good doing so, by the way, if he can pull that off. And for Gilbert Burns, this is everything he wanted to get into the position to be a title contender. So very, very rarely do we see everything align this way, but this really is kind of one of those perfect storm scenarios.
It is. And I think if he comes in the way he came in against Kamaru Usman, which was incredibly flat, he just didn't look himself. It didn't look sharp, didn't look prepared, looked tired. It was like one of those days where you go to the gym and go, I don't want to be here. And you're kind of going through the motions. You know what I mean? We're like, I just want to get through this and go to bed and go home. It kind of looked like that. Like he just seemed flat. He cannot afford to be flat against Gilbert Burns. He really can't be. That guy's dangerous just about everywhere. And so that's an interesting thing to me is, will Tyron Woodley show us that championship level ability? Because if he goes on a run and is feeling sharp and feeling good, there aren't many guys he can't compete with and beat at 170. There just aren't. I mean, he's got the skill set to do it if he still has the desire and everything's, kind of clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, I think we're going to see where each of these guys want their careers to go in a way with this fight. Is Woodley still 100% committed to this and wants to put in championship level performances? And is Burns ready to step up and take that next level and fight for a UFC championship? It's rarely a narrative that's this direct, but in this case, I mean, there's no two ways around it.
You can't see it any other way. I think the winner is certainly in the title conversation. The loser, if it's Tyron Woodley, and I've said it many, many times, this business generally isn't kind to former champions, right? They just, they're yesterday's news. Gilbert Burns, like, another puffed up 55er who didn't make it at 170. So I think the drop off for the loser is very, very sharp.
I'm going to leave you with this question. I think there's a couple fans, I don't know if you're aware of this, few fans don't like Colby Covington, right?
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. Heard that once or twice.
Who would be the worst case scenario right now for Colby to win this? Gilbert Burns or Woodley?
He'd make let me just say this. He'd make a lot of money fighting both because there's he's been going after Tyron Woodley forever. There's a ton of heat on that one. And then there's Gilbert Burns with the, Brazilians are filthy animals. Burns kind of, fighting for his country in this one. So I think there's a lot of heat in each one, to borrow a pro wrestling term. There's a lot of heat. It would get a big push. It would make a lot of money. So I don't think there's a bad one. I think Tyron Woodley, with his wrestling ability, takes away a lot of Colby Covington's ace in the hole, which is he out wrestles almost everyone. You saw with Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman, he wasn't able to out wrestle him, and his striking pace, he couldn't keep it up for 5 rounds. Same thing with Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley, Division I All-American, just like Colby Covington. Colby Covington was at Oregon State. Tyron Woodley at Mizzou. He can stop that takedown, and he can make you throw heat for 5 rounds. That's very difficult to do. Burns would have a tougher time with the wrestling of Colby Covington. So I think stylistically, a worse matchup is Tyron Woodley.
Win or lose, you've got really good storylines going forward for a championship or going backwards if you have Colby as the draw on the other side of this.
Exactly. And I think, of course, Colby, to me, is kind of the natural foil for either one of these guys.
Oh, he loves hearing that. Like, Inspector Gadget. What was the arch enemy that sat there and like petted the cat in the chair? That's how I picture Colby Covington when you describe him as the foil.
Spectre. Right, yes. Exactly.
The foil. That's exactly what he wants to be known as. The foil and the cringe of the whole division. So yeah, no, couldn't be in a better place. I guess we're just really right now trying to better understand why I could push back a week and trying to figure out where it is and hoping with all our might that we have our one ask of Gilbert Burns to get that Tyron Woodley music, if you want to call it that, on the speakers, on the walkout, and we'll be all set. We appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly with more commentary.